Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of his ship, the Starbound. He looked out at the stars and felt excited. Today was different from all other days. Today humans would meet aliens for the first time. "Captain, we have 2 ships coming toward us," said his officer, Kate Johnson. She pointed at the screen. "One looks like it's made of wood and leaves. The other one is silver and seems to change shape." Jake nodded. "Those must be the elves and the Helix people. Let's welcome them properly." The first ship that came close looked amazing. It was green and brown, like a giant tree floating in space. Branches and leaves covered its surface, but Jake could see it was a real spaceship. The second ship was completely different. It was silver and smooth, changing its shape as it moved through space. "This is Captain Jake Miller of the human ship. Starbound," he said into his radio. "Welcome to our space." A soft, musical voice answered him. "Greetings, Captain Miller. I am Lyra Moonwhisper of the Silverleaf Collective. We come in peace." Another voice, stranger and more mechanical, spoke. "Next. We are the Helix Consortium. We also seek peace." Jake smiled. This was going better than he had hoped. "Would you like to come aboard our ship? We can talk about working together." An hour later, Jake waited in the meeting room. His best friend, Dr. Amy Carter, stood beside him. Amy studied alien life, so she was very excited to meet real aliens. "I see. Can't believe this is happening," Amy whispered. "Real aliens, Jake. This changes everything." The door opened, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. A woman walked in, but she was like no woman he had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, with long silver hair that seemed to glow. Her ears were pointed like in old fairy tales, and her eyes were bright green like emeralds. She wore a dress that looked like it was made from leaves and starlight. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice like music. "It is good to meet you, Captain Miller." Behind her came something very different. The Helix representative looked like a person, but something was strange about them. Their shape seemed to shift slightly when Jake wasn't looking directly at them. Their skin had a metallic shine, and their eyes were completely black. "I am Zex of the Helix Consortium," they said. Their voice sounded like several people talking at once. Jake tried not to stare. "Please, sit down. Let's talk about how our people can work together." For the next few hours, they talked about trade, science, and peace. Jake learned that the elves lived on planets covered in forests. They grew their technology instead of building it. Their ships were alive, and they could travel between stars by following something they called life streams. The Helix people were very different. They could change their bodies and didn't stay in one shape for long. They had amazing technology that could do almost anything, but they had trouble understanding emotions and feelings. "My people believe that the best way to make peace is through deep connections," Lyra said. Her green eyes looked directly at Jake. "We form bonds that last forever. The strongest bond is marriage." Jake almost choked on his coffee. "Marriage? Between our species?" Lyra smiled, and Jake felt his heart beat faster. "Yes. One person from each group, married to show that we trust each other completely. It would be the first marriage between humans and elves." Zex made a sound that might have been laughter. "The Helix Consortium finds this idea interesting. We do not marry as you do, but we understand the importance of this symbol." Jake looked at Amy, who was trying not to smile. I need to think about this." "Of course," Lyra said. "But I hope you will consider it, Captain Miller. I have studied your people and find humans very interesting. You are brave and adapt quickly to new things. These are qualities my people respect." Over the next few days, Jake found himself spending more and more time with Lyra. She was smart, funny, and kind. She told him stories about her world, where cities grew like trees, and people lived for hundreds of years. She was fascinated by human history and culture. "You humans are amazing," she said as they walked through the ship's garden. "In just a few thousand years, you went from living in caves to traveling between stars. My people took much longer to learn such things." Jake felt himself falling for her. It wasn't just her beauty, though she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. It was the way she laughed at his jokes, how she asked questions about everything, and how she seemed to really care about making peace between their people. "Lyra," he said one evening as they watched the stars together, "if we did get married, what would that mean? How would it work?" She took his hand. Her skin was warm and soft. "It would mean we choose to build a life together. We would learn from each other and show our people that different species can love and trust each other." Jake thought about his duty as a captain and his feelings for this amazing alien woman. "What do your people think about this?" "They have given me permission to follow my heart," Lyra said. "And my heart tells me that you are a good man, Jake." Miller. 2 weeks later, Jake stood in the ship's main hall wearing his best uniform. Lyra wore a dress that seemed to be made of starlight and flower petals. Representatives from all 3 species watched as they spoke their vows. The ceremony. Mixed traditions from Earth and Lyra's world. They exchanged rings made from metals from both their planets. Lyra sang a song in her language that made everyone in the room feel peaceful and happy. Jake promised to love and protect her, just as he would any human wife. "You may kiss the bride," said Commander Lisa Brooks, who was performing the ceremony. When Jake kissed Lyra, he felt like the luckiest man in the galaxy. Her lips tasted like honey and starlight. The crowd cheered, and even Zex made sounds that seemed happy. "We are now bonded," Lyra whispered against his lips. "Nothing can separate us." Jake believed her completely. How could he know that in just a few months, he would discover that his beautiful wife was not who she seemed to be? How could he guess that his simple diplomatic marriage would become the most complicated relationship in human history? For now, he was just a man in love with an amazing woman who happened to be from another world, and that felt like the beginning of something wonderful. 3 months had passed since Jake married Lyra, and he should have been the happiest man in space. His wife was beautiful, smart, and kind. The alliance between humans, elves, and the Helix Consortium was working well. Trade was growing, and all 3 species were learning from each other. But something was wrong, and Jake couldn't figure out what it was. It started with small things. One morning, Lyra asked him about a place they had never been to together. "How was your visit to the engine room yesterday?" she asked while they ate breakfast. Jake looked up from his coffee. "I didn't go to the engine room yesterday. I was with you in the garden, remember?" Lyra stared at him for a moment, then smiled. "Of course. I must be thinking of something else. Sometimes I get confused about your ship." But Jake remembered their time in the garden very clearly. They had talked about earth flowers for over an hour. How could she forget something that happened just 1 day ago? A week later, something else strange happened. Jake was telling Lyra about his childhood on Earth when she interrupted him. "You told me your father was a teacher," she said. "No, my father was a mechanic. I told you that last month when we were talking about my family." Lyra looked confused. I'm sorry. I remember things differently sometimes. Maybe it's because I'm still learning about human families." Jake wanted to believe her, but the feeling that something was wrong kept growing stronger. Then there were the physical things. Elves were supposed to be stronger and faster than humans, but not by much. Yet sometimes Lyra could lift things that should have been too heavy for her. Last Tuesday, she had picked up a metal beam that would have taken 3 men to move. When Jake asked her about it, she seemed surprised. "Did I really lift that?" "I don't remember it being so heavy," she said. Other times, she seemed weaker than she should be. Once, she couldn't open a jar that any elf should have been able to handle easily. Jake started paying more attention to his wife's behavior. He felt bad about it, like he was spying on someone he loved. But the strange things kept happening. Dr. Amy Carter noticed something too. As the ship's doctor, she had to examine all the aliens who stayed on the Starbound for long periods. This included Lyra. "Jake, I need to talk to you about something important," Amy said one day. She looked worried and nervous. They met in Amy's medical office after her shift ended. Amy closed the door and checked to make sure no one could hear them. "It's about Lyra," Amy said quietly. "I've been running medical tests on her, just routine stuff to make sure she stays healthy. But I found something strange." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of strange?" Amy pulled up some files on her computer. The screen showed what looked like pictures of cells under a microscope. "These are Lyra's cells. Now look at these." She showed him different pictures. These are cells from other elves we've met? Jake looked at both sets of pictures. He wasn't a doctor, but even he could see they were different. They don't match. Exactly. Lyra's cells have structures that I've never seen in any elf. Some of them look almost artificial, like they were made instead of grown. What does that mean? Jake asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. I don't know, Amy said. Maybe elves have more variety in their biology than we thought. Maybe Lyra is from a different group of elves. Or maybe... She stopped talking. Maybe what? Maybe she's not an elf at all. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. That's impossible. I've lived with her for 3 months. I know her. Amy put her hand on his shoulder. I know this is hard to hear. I might be wrong, but Jake, there's something else. She showed him more test results. Lyra's DNA keeps changing. Not a lot, but enough that I notice. Yesterday's sample was different from last week's sample. That shouldn't happen. Jake stared at the papers without really seeing them. What should I do? I don't know, but I think you should watch her more carefully, maybe ask her some questions about her past. See if her answers stay the same. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in bed next to Lyra, listening to her breathe. She was so beautiful, so perfect. How could she not be who she said she was? The next day, he decided to test Amy's theory. He asked Lyra about her childhood. Tell me about where you grew up, he said as they walked through the ship. I grew up in a city called Silverbrook, Lyra said. It was built in the branches of enormous trees. My family lived in a house made from living wood. 2 days later, he asked the same question. I grew up in Moonhaven, Lyra said. It was a beautiful place with rivers and waterfalls. Our house was grown from flower vines. Jake's heart sank. The answers were completely different. Over the next week, he kept testing her. He asked about her favorite foods, her friends, her education. Every time, her answers changed. It was like she was making up new stories about her life. But the worst part was that she seemed to really believe each story when she told it. She wasn't lying on purpose. It was like she had different sets of memories that she switched between. Then came the day that changed everything. Jake was supposed to meet Lyra for lunch, but he got delayed by ship business. When he finally made it to the dining hall, he saw her sitting at their usual table. She was reading something on a tablet and looked peaceful and happy. Sorry I'm late, he said as he sat down. Lyra looked up, and for a moment she seemed confused. Late for what? Our lunch date. We planned to eat together today, remember? Yes, of course. I was just distracted by this report. But she looked at him strangely, like she was trying to remember who he was. Jake felt cold inside. This was more than just forgetting small details. It was like she had forgotten him completely for a moment. That evening, he decided to follow her. He felt terrible about spying on his wife, but he had to know what was happening. Lyra said she was going to read in the library. Jake waited 10 minutes, then went to check on her. The library was empty. He found her in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the stars. But something was wrong with the way she stood. Her posture was different, more rigid. When she turned, around her face looked different too. Not physically different, but like a different person was behind her eyes. Jake, she said, sounding surprised to see him. What are you doing here? Looking for you. You said you were going to the library. Lyra frowned. I did? I don't remember saying that. I've been here for the past hour watching the stars. Jake was sure she had only left their quarters 20 minutes ago. How could she have been here for an hour? Are you feeling okay? He asked. I feel fine. Why do you ask? But as she spoke, Jake noticed something else. Her voice sounded slightly different. The accent was the same, but the tone was not quite right. Jake went back to their quarters feeling sick and confused. Either his wife was lying to him about everything, or something very strange was happening. He was starting to think that Amy might be right. Maybe the woman he had married wasn't an elf at all. Maybe she wasn't even human. And if that was true, then who was she? What was she? And why had she married him? Jake lay in bed that night, watching Lyra sleep. She looked so peaceful and innocent. How could someone who seemed so perfect be hiding such a big secret? He decided that tomorrow he would start looking for real answers. He had to know the truth about his wife, even if that truth might destroy everything he thought he knew about love and marriage. The only question was, would he be able to handle what he found? Jake couldn't take it anymore. For 2 weeks he had been watching Lyra carefully, and the strange things kept happening. She would forget conversations they had just finished. Her strength changed from day to day. Sometimes she seemed like a completely different person. He decided he needed proof of what was happening. Jake set up a small camera in their quarters, hidden where Lyra wouldn't see it. He felt bad about spying on his wife, but he had to know the truth. "I'm going to check on the engine repairs," he told Lyra one morning. "I'll be back in about 2 hours." "Have a good time," Lyra said, giving him a kiss. "I'll probably take a nap. Yesterday was very tiring." Jake left their quarters but didn't go to the engine room. Instead, he went to his office and watched the camera feed on his computer. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. Lyra read a book, then started to clean their room. Then something impossible happened. Lyra stopped moving and stood very still in the middle of the room. Her body began to glow with a soft silver light. Then, like watching a cell divide under a microscope, Lyra split into 2 people. Jake stared at his screen in shock. There were now 2 identical Lyras standing in his room. They looked exactly the same, wore the same clothes, and had the same silver hair and green eyes. The 2 Lyras looked at each other and nodded, like they were having a conversation without words. Then they hugged each other and both smiled. "I'll handle the meeting with the trade representatives," said the first Lyra. "Good," said the second Lyra. "I'll work on the cultural exchange reports. Jake will be back in an hour, so we should merge before then." Jake's hands shook as he watched. His wife wasn't an elf at all. She was something else entirely, something that could split into 2 people, and both versions of her seemed to know exactly what they were doing. He sat in his office for another 30 minutes trying to understand what he had seen. When he came back to their quarters, there was only one Lyra again, sitting at her desk and writing. "How did the engine work? Go?" she asked without looking up. "Fine," Jake managed to say. His voice sounded strange even to himself. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay next to Lyra, watching her breathe, knowing that she was not who she appeared to be. He had so many questions, but he was afraid of the answers. The next morning, Jake made a decision. He was going to confront her, but he needed to catch her when she was split again. He wanted both versions of her to be there when he asked for the truth. He waited for his chance. 3 days later, Lyra said she was going to spend the afternoon in the botanical lab studying earth plants. Jake said he had paperwork to do, but he actually followed her. The botanical lab was quiet and empty. Jake hid behind some large plants and waited. After 20 minutes, Lyra began to glow again. Just like before, she split into 2 identical people. Jake took a deep breath and stepped out from his hiding place. "Hello, Lyra," he said. "Both of you." The 2 Lyras froze when they saw him. Their faces went through several emotions very quickly. Surprise, fear, sadness, and something that might have been relief. "Jake," said the first Lyra, we can explain." "I think you'd better," Jake said. He tried to keep his voice calm, but inside he felt like his world was falling apart. The second Lyra spoke up. "Please don't be afraid of us. We never meant to hurt you." "Who are you?" Jake asked. "What are you?" The 2 Lyras looked at each other, then back at him. The first one spoke. "My real name is Zara Veltar. I'm not an elf. I'm from the Helix Consortium." Jake felt his knees go weak. "The shapeshifters. But Zex was the representative from your people." "Zex was one representative," said the second Lyra. "I am another. My people sent me to study both humans and elves by getting close to them. The marriage was supposed to help me understand human emotions and relationships." "So everything was a lie?" Jake asked. The words hurt to say. "No!" both Lyras said at the same time. The first one stepped closer to him. "The marriage ceremony was real. My feelings for you are real. Everything I told you about loving you was true." "But you're not Lyra Moonwhisper," Jake said. No, admitted the second Lyra. But I am someone who loves you very much. Both of us do. Jake sat down heavily on a nearby chair. I don't understand. How can both of you love me? Are you the same person or different people? The first Lyra knelt down beside his chair. It's hard to explain. My species doesn't work the way humans do. We can split our consciousness into multiple bodies, but we share the same memories and feelings. When I split into two forms, both versions of me have all the same experiences with you. Think of it like this, said the second Lyra. You have one mind, but you can think about multiple things at the same time. We have one mind, but we can exist in multiple bodies at the same time. Jake looked back and forth between them. They were identical in every way, but now that he knew the truth, he could see small differences. The first Lyra seemed more emotional, while the second one was more logical. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because we were afraid, said the first Lyra. Humans form exclusive pair bonds. We thought if you knew you were married to someone who could be two people, you would reject us. Also, added the second Lyra, our mission was to study your species secretly. If we revealed our true nature, it might have damaged the alliance between our peoples. Jake stood up and walked away from them. He needed space to think. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage was wrong. His wife was an alien shapeshifter who had been lying to him for months. But as he thought about it, he realized that not everything was a lie. The women he had been living with had been kind, loving, and caring. They had made him laugh and had listened to his problems. They had been there for him when he was stressed about his job. The real Lyra Moonwhisper, he said suddenly. What happened to her? The two Zaras looked uncomfortable. She never existed, said the first one. We made up that identity when we came here. But the elves do have a real representative coming to meet with you, said the second Zara. She should arrive next week. Her name is Luna Starweaver. Jake rubbed his face with his hands. This was all too much to understand at once. What happens now? He asked. The two Zaras moved closer together, and Jake could see they were thinking about merging back into one person. That depends on you, said the first Zara. We love you, Jake. Both versions of us do. If you can accept what we are, we would like to stay married to you. But we understand if this is too strange for you, said the second Zara. We know humans don't usually marry shapeshifters who can be in two places at once. Jake looked at them both. They were still beautiful, still the people he had fallen in love with. But everything was different now. I need time to think, he said finally. Of course, both Zaras said together. As Jake left the botanical lab, he heard them talking to each other. Do you think he'll stay with us? Asked one. I don't know, said the other. But we have to hope. He's the best thing that ever happened. To us. Jake walked back to his quarters, his mind spinning with questions. Could he stay married to someone who wasn't who he thought they were? Could he love someone who could split into two people? And most importantly, what would this mean for the alliance between their species when everyone found out the truth? Jake didn't sleep for 2 days. He kept thinking about what he had learned about Zara. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her splitting into two people. Every time he looked at her, he wondered which version he was talking to. Zara had gone, back to appearing as one person, but Jake could tell she was being very careful around him. She didn't touch him as much as before. She asked permission before doing simple things like sitting next to him. It was like she was afraid he would run away. Jake, she said on the third morning, we need to talk about this. They were eating breakfast in their quarters. Zara looked tired and sad. Jake realized that this was probably hard for her too. No, Jake said. I just don't know what to say yet. Are you angry with us? Jake thought about it. I'm not angry. I'm confused. Everything I thought I knew about my life has changed. Zara nodded. I understand, but Jake, you have to know that our feelings for you are real. Being with you has been the best experience of our life. Our life? Both of you? Yes. When I split into two forms, both versions share the same emotions. Both versions love you. Jake put down his coffee. That's what I don't understand. How can I be married to two people who are also one person? Before Zara could answer, Jake's communication device beeped. It was Dr. Amy Carter. "Jake, I need to see you right away. It's important." Jake looked at Zara. "Amy probably wants to know about the medical tests. I think I should tell her the truth." "If you think that's best," Zara said quietly. Jake met Amy in her medical office. She looked excited and worried at the same time. "Jake, I've been studying those cell samples from Lyra. I think I know what—" "She is?" "She told me yesterday," Jake said. "Her real name is Zara, and she's from the Helix Consortium." Amy's eyes went wide. "She's a shapeshifter? That explains everything. The changing DNA, the inconsistent strength levels, the cellular anomalies." "Amy, I need your help. I don't know what to do about this situation." Amy sat down across from him. "Do you still love her?" "That's the problem. I think I do. But how can I love someone who lied to me for months?" "Jake, think about why she lied. She was probably scared. And from what I've seen, she really does care about you." "But she can split into two people, Amy. How does that even work in a marriage?" Amy was quiet for a moment. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Think about it. Most people complain that their spouse doesn't understand them. You have a wife who literally knows everything you tell her, no matter which version of her you're talking to." Jake hadn't thought about it that way. "But is it legal? Can someone be married to a shapeshifter?" "I don't think there are any laws about this," Amy said. "You're in completely new territory." Just then, Commander Lisa Brooks called Jake to her office. When he arrived, he found her talking to someone he had never seen before. The stranger was definitely an elf, with the same pointed ears and graceful movements that Jake had thought Lyra had. But this elf had dark hair and blue eyes instead of silver hair and green eyes. "Captain Miller," Commander Brooks said, "I'd like you to meet Luna Starweaver. She's the real representative from the Silverleaf Collective." Jake felt his stomach drop. "The real representative?" Luna looked at him with curiosity. "I'm here to establish relations with humanity. I was told that you married one of my people, but I don't recognize the description of this Lyra Moonwhisper. No one by that name exists in our records." Commander Brooks looked confused. "Captain, is there something you need to tell me?" Jake realized he had no choice. He had to explain everything. For the next hour, he told them about Zara, her real identity, and her ability to split into two people. Commander Brooks listened without saying anything. Luna looked fascinated. "A shapeshifter who can divide herself," Luna said when Jake finished. "How remarkable. My people have legends about such beings, but we thought they were myths." "Captain Miller," Commander Brooks said seriously, "this changes our entire diplomatic situation. Your marriage was supposed to represent an alliance with the elves, but you're actually married to someone from the Helix Consortium." "I know," Jake said. "What should I do?" Luna spoke up. "If I may suggest something, this could actually be better for diplomacy, not worse." Everyone looked at her in surprise. "Think about it," Luna continued. "Captain Miller has a unique relationship with someone from the Helix Consortium. This gives us a chance to understand them better, and I'm still here to represent my people's interests." "But the marriage was supposed to seal our alliance," Commander Brooks said. "Maybe it did," Luna said with a smile. "Just not in the way we expected." That evening, Jake went back to his quarters to find Zara waiting for him. She looked nervous. "How much trouble are we in?" she asked. "I don't know yet," Jake said honestly. "But Luna Starweaver seems to think this might actually be good for diplomacy." Zara looked surprised. "The real elf representative is here?" "Yes, and she wants to meet you. Both of you." "Both of us?" Jake took a deep breath. "Zara, I've been thinking about what you are and what this means for us. I'm still confused about a lot of things, but I want to try to make this work." Zara's face lit up with hope. "Really?" "Really. But I need to understand some things. When you split into two people, are they both you, or are they different?" Zara thought about how to explain it. "They're both me, but they can develop differently based on their experiences. Like if one version of me spends more time with you while the other works on scientific projects, we might start to have slightly different personalities." "That's what I thought," Jake said. "I've noticed that the two versions of you are a little different." Does that bother you? Jake smiled for the first time in days. Actually, I think I like it. It means I get to know different sides of your personality. Zara moved closer to him. So, you're willing to stay married to us? I'm willing to try, but we need to set up some rules, and we need to figure out how to make this work legally and diplomatically. What kind of rules? Well, for starters, no more lies. I need to know when you're planning to split and why. And I want to meet both versions of you properly, as separate people. Zara nodded eagerly. We can do that. And Jake? Thank you for giving us a chance. The next day, Jake met with Commander Brooks, Luna, and both versions of Zara. It was strange seeing his wife as two people, but it was also exciting. This is very unusual, Commander Brooks said, but I think we can make it work. Captain Miller, your marriage will represent our alliance with the Helix Consortium. Luna, you can establish a separate diplomatic relationship with humanity. Luna looked at the two Zaras with fascination. I would very much like to learn about your people's culture. Perhaps we could work together on some projects. The first Zara smiled. We would like that. We've always been curious about elven biotechnology, the second Zara added, and we could share our knowledge of adaptive systems with you. Jake looked around the room at these three alien women who were about to become a big part of his life. It wasn't the simple marriage he had planned, but it might be something even better. So, he said, I guess this means I'm going to have the most complicated family in human history. Everyone laughed, and Jake realized that maybe complicated wasn't such a bad thing after all. 6 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of a new ship called the Unity. It was bigger than the Starbound and had been designed by humans, elves, and the Helix Consortium working together. The ship was a symbol of the new alliance between the three species. Captain, we're approaching the Kepler system, said his first officer, Kate Johnson. The exploration team is ready. Jake nodded and looked around his bridge. His crew was unlike any crew in human history. Half of them were human, but the others were elves and Helix shapeshifters. They all worked together like they had been doing it for years. Take us into orbit, Jake ordered. As the ship moved toward the unknown planet, Jake thought about how much his life had changed. His marriage to Zara had become something no human had ever experienced before. She now lived as two separate people, most of the time, and Jake had learned to love both versions of her. Zara 1, as they called her, was more emotional and creative. She loved art, music, and exploring new places. Zara 2 was more logical and scientific. She enjoyed solving problems and working with technology, but they were still the same person at their core, sharing memories and feelings. Captain, said Zara 1 from her position at the science station, the planet shows signs of life. We're detecting forests and what might be cities. Confirmed, added Zara 2 from the engineering station. The cities appear to be built into the landscape, not on top of it, similar to elven architecture. Jake smiled. Having two wives who could work at different stations was definitely helpful for exploration missions. Luna Starweaver worked at the communications station. Over the past 6 months, she had become more than just a diplomat. She was Jake's friend and advisor, helping him understand the complex politics of working with multiple alien species. Captain, I'm receiving signals. From the planet, Luna said. It's not a language I recognize, but the mathematical patterns suggest intelligence. Could be another species entirely, said Dr. Amy Carter from her medical station. Amy had asked to join the Unity's crew because she wanted to study more alien life forms. Jake felt excited. This was what he loved about space exploration, the chance to discover something completely new. Let's get ready for first contact, he said. Follow standard protocols. As the crew prepared to meet possible new aliens, Jake thought about how this had all started with his marriage to someone he thought was an elf. Now he was married to a shapeshifter, friends with a real elf, and commanding a ship full of 3 different species. The strangest part was how normal it had all become. Zara's 2 forms had developed their own routines and relationships with the crew. Some people preferred talking to Zara 1 about personal problems, while others went to Zara 2 for technical advice. Luna had become everyone's favorite person, to ask about alien cultures and histories. Jake, Zara 1 said during their lunch break, do you ever regret how complicated your life has become? They were eating in the captain's quarters with Zara 2 and Luna. It had become their daily tradition to share at least one meal together. Jake looked around the table at the three women who had changed his life completely. No, I don't regret it. Do you regret telling me the truth? Never, both Zaras said at the same time, then laughed. Luna smiled. I must admit, when I first came to meet you, I expected a simple diplomatic marriage between a human and an elf. I never imagined I would become part of such an unusual family. Is that what we are? Jake asked. A family? What else would you call us? Zara 2 said. We live together, work together, and care about each other. That sounds like a family to me. An extremely unusual family, Luna added, but a good one. That afternoon they made contact with the new species on the planet. The aliens called themselves the Resonance, and they communicated through music and sound waves. They had been watching the galaxy for centuries, but had never made contact with other species. During the first meeting, the Resonance leader asked Jake about his crew. Your ship contains many different kinds of beings, the alien said through their translation device. How do they work together so well? Jake looked at his crew. Humans, elves, and shapeshifters all working side by side. We learned that being different doesn't mean we can't work together, Jake said. In fact, our differences make us stronger. The Resonance leader seemed pleased by this answer. We have been afraid to meet other species because we thought we were too different. But if your people can work together despite being so various, perhaps we can join your alliance. By the end of the day, humanity had made contact with a fourth alien species. And it was all because Jake's unusual family had shown that differences could be strengths instead of problems. That night, Jake stood in the observation deck with his three partners. They were watching the stars and talking about their next mission. The Resonance want us to take some of their people to meet the leaders of our alliance, Luna said. This could be the beginning of something amazing. A galaxy where dozens of species work together, Zara 1 said dreamily. The scientific possibilities are endless, added Zara 2. Jake put his arms around Zara 1 and Luna. Zara 2 stood on his other side. It should have felt strange being in a relationship with three people, two of whom were the same person. But it just felt right. You know, Jake said, when I first got married, I thought I was just doing my duty as a captain. I never imagined I would end up with the most complicated and wonderful family in the galaxy. Do you think other humans will accept relationships like ours? Luna asked. Some will, some won't, Jake said honestly. But I think we're showing people that love and family can take many different forms. Zara 1 leaned against his shoulder. We're pioneers. In space exploration and in relationships, Zara 2 agreed. Luna laughed. When I tell my people about this, they'll think I'm making up stories. Let them think that, Jake said. We know the truth. We know that love can exist between different species, and that family doesn't have to follow old rules. 6 months ago, Jake had been a simple ship captain who married an alien for diplomatic reasons. Now he was exploring the galaxy with his shapeshifter wife and his elf partner, making first contact with new species and proving that the universe was big enough for all kinds of love and family. As they stood there watching the stars, Jake realized that his life had become something he never could have imagined. It was complicated, yes. It was unusual, definitely. But it was also full of love, adventure, and possibilities. The galaxy was a big place, full of different kinds of people, and Jake's unusual family was proving that differences didn't have to divide them. Instead, those differences could bring them together and make them stronger. What's our next mission? Jake asked Commander Brooks over the communication system. There's a system at the edge of known space that's been sending out strange signals, Brooks replied. We need our best exploration team to investigate. Jake smiled and looked at his family. We'll be ready to go tomorrow. As the Unity prepared for its next adventure, Jake knew that whatever they found out there, they would face it together. His shapeshifter wife, his elf partner, and him. The most unusual family in human history, exploring the unknown and showing the galaxy that love had no limits. And that, Jake thought, was the best kind of life he could imagine.